Hello, and welcome back. I'm Andrew, and I'm a bookish priest. Today we're here to talk about a book coming out later this month called Called Out, 100 Devotions for LGBTQ Christians by Carrington Heath. We're here today to talk about Called Out, a book of devotionals for LGBTQ Christians by Carrington Heath. This is the cover with some reflection on it. Thank you very much to Westminster John Knox Press and NetGalley for giving me a digital arc of this book in exchange for a fair and honest review. Whenever we read, whatever we read, but especially I think in a field like theology, it's helpful to know who we're talking with in the conversation that is a book. Carrington Heath is an American writer, is actually the Reverend Carrington Heath, was ordained in the Presbyterian Church USA, and then in 2009, I believe, they transferred their ordination to the United Church of Christ, still in the United States, over the formal exclusion of LGBTQ people in ministry in the Presbyterian Church. They are married and serve in the United Church of Christ today in New England. There are no surprises in Called Out. It does precisely what it claims it will do, and for me, that is a virtue worth extolling. I love things that do what they say on the box, and this book absolutely fits that bill. The publisher describes this book as being inspired by the experience of growing up different. Coming out in disapproving environments and having to negotiate a life of faith and a relationship with God through institutions and relationships with other people that were perhaps not always very helpful. Carrington Heath's early ordained ministry was in chaplaincy and healthcare situations, particularly in emergency rooms and trauma units. And so in addition to their own lived experience as an LGBTQ person, this book is informed by some of their work dealing with folks who are having the worst day of their life, and then all of the other stuff that happens around that. There's a short and informative introduction to what the book is for, why it was written, worth your time, and then the format becomes pretty clear pretty quickly. There are 100 devotions, each of which is 2 to 4 pages long, give or take. They start with a quote from Scripture, then there is a reflection, a meditation on that Scripture, and the devotion closes with a prayer. The anecdotes are primarily personal anecdotes from Carrington Heath's own life and career. This is one of the parts where it's important to remember where Carrington Heath comes from. Being an LGBTQ person, it's not an easy thing, and some of these anecdotes reflect the unpleasant experiences that many of us LGBTQ people have, just because we exist in a world that is often not welcoming and regularly hostile to our existence. I guess it's a content warning. None of the anecdotes are gratuitous or excessive, but if you are a person for whom discussions about homophobia and the experiences of LGBTQ people in light of a world where homophobia is alive and well, go into this ready to encounter that. As I say, it's not gratuitous, it's not excessive, it's not gory, but the topic comes up. And I don't think that's a bad thing. The stories are shared sensitively and carefully, and I think it would be a lesser book, and I think indeed it would be disingenuous to write a book of devotionals for LGBTQ people that didn't touch on the particular experience of being an LGBTQ person, and tragically, in our world, that experience includes really negative attention from all kinds of other people. So congratulations to Carrington Heath on managing to approach that subject and all sorts of difficult and unpleasant life experiences in a careful, sensitive, prayerful, and reflective way without making it gratuitous, excessive, or simply present for some kind of shock value. Depending on your personal piety and your expectations of a book of devotionals as a Christian or a person interested in just what a book of devotionals might be, remember where the author comes from. A United Church of Christ minister who was originally formed as a Presbyterian Church USA minister. Neither of these things is inherently good or bad. It just means that the author's theology and relationship with Scripture and theological responses to their life are going to come from certain places. So if you are coming from a markedly different tradition or theological standpoint, you may not find your expectations lining up ideally with what Carrington Heath is doing in this book, but I think as long as you go in knowing the vantage point from which you are listening and they are speaking, you won't have a problem making sense of what's going on here. Overall, I think this is a really excellent book of devotionals. Short, to the point, well written, easy to incorporate in a prayer or reflective practice throughout the day, and absolutely worth your time picking up and adding to your library. Good for any LGBTQ Christian person, and I think a worthwhile exercise in reading and studying and listening for people who are trying to figure out what the experience of being an LGBTQ Christian might be like. People who are looking to understand better and develop some empathy around what our lives in different Christian contexts and institutions are like. This book might be helpful. The sirens? The personal nature of the anecdotes and some of the reflections, I think, might be useful in giving some insight into our lived experience, different from a more academic book on, say, queer theology or something like that. So, Called Out, 100 Devotions for LGBTQ Christians by E. Carrington Heath. Absolutely worth your time if you need a book or want a book of devotionals. It comes out on the 27th of September, 2022. Definitely pre-order it, ideally from your local independent bookstore. And give the author a shout out on social media. They are definitely around and paying attention, and would be delighted to know that you've heard of the book and are planning on picking it up and reading it. Thanks for being here with me today. Please do all of the things that one does in a YouTube video. Click the thumbs up like button, subscribe to the channel so you know when the next video comes out. I think the next video is actually a different book of devotions with a completely different focus, so watch for that. Leave me a comment below. Tell me if you're looking forward to Called Out, if there are other resources for LGBTQ Christians that you know of or would like to see me talk about on this channel. And look around for me on social media. bookishpriest.com is the website, and you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, under the handle bookishpriest. Until next time, I'm Andrew, I'm a bookish priest, and may all of your reading be a blessing. Bye.